Here I am, Joe LaChance, Joe the Weed Guy here with Mark Braunstein.
Hey, Joe.
Mark, how are you, my friend? We're over here at the Burn and Learn Center. We're talking the power of the plant. And Mark, it's a pleasure having you here. And I just wanted to ask you a few things about the plant and how it's affected and helped your life. When did you start using cannabis?
Well, long before I used it medicinally, I think most people, I was using it recreationally.
Of course.
I'm a child of the flower child era of the 60s. I'm 73 years old. I started smoking in the 60s, 1967. So, as a recreational user, as most of my friends did. And for me, it was maybe once or twice a week on the weekends. And that was it. The real pivotal stage in my life occurred in 1990, 34 years ago, when I became paraplegic from a spinal cord injury from a diving accident.
Oh, okay.
And just using it recreationally a little bit more often than otherwise, my first few weeks, my first few months in rehab and everything, I'm feeling sorry for myself. And my girlfriend would bring it, we'd go at Gaylord Hospital, we'd sneak out in the back there, it's a beautiful area and the woods all around. We'd sneak out in the back and smoke a joint. And I wasn't getting the spasms that all the other spinal cord injury patients were complaining about. Spasms from spinal cord injury are almost identical to those people who have multiple sclerosis. MS is more widely known, more people have it than SCI, spinal cord injury. And the spasms are uncontrollable movements in muscles where you do not have control, where you're paralyzed. Okay? And that would mean, for instance, if I had it in my hand, it'd be like that.
Right.
And that's not a big deal if you're sitting, let's be honest, if you're sitting in a wheelchair and your foot starts spasming, it may not look very socially acceptable, but it doesn't impede on your being able to function otherwise. Right. But in my case, because I walk with crutches,
right,
and leg braces.
Okay.
And when my feet are spasming, they're pushing out of the leg brace and pushing me in the opposite direction I want to be walking. So medicating is very important in my case, okay? And then there's accompanying pain from those spasms.
Right.
I don't care about the pain. I appreciate pain. As a person who doesn't have feeling in places where most people have feeling.
Right.
Where I do have feeling, if that feeling is pain, I'm all for it, okay? But the spasms are something that do impede on my exercising and my walking and so forth.
Day-to-day life.
Right. There's another aspect for spinal cord injury, and that is it's a very poor term, it's called tone. Really, it means stiffness. Paralysis is not limp. Paralysis is stiff.
The muscles,
yes,
right?
Like
because,
that.
Right, they're not getting the signals, so that they stiffen up, right?
And they just clamp up. Like if you see quadriplegics in their wheelchairs, you may notice that they have that kind of claw-like hand. That's the tone.
The muscle.
Right. And I find that when I smoke, and for the next almost half a day after, my tone is totally relieved. I bounce when I smoke, when I walk. And that makes a big difference in my walking ability, in my stamina, in my strength, and shall I say, in my grace. I know I don't look graceful when I walk, but I feel graceful because I have the extra bounce.
Right.
That the tone prevents me from
There's
having.
not tension there.
Yeah.
Right.
So my use is recreational and medicinal.
Of course. As is everyone's, they don't know it.
Right.
But I wanted to ask you, is there a specific way that you prefer to use your cannabis? So let's say for the medicinal purposes, do you use a topical maybe on your leg? Do you prefer smoking, or do you prefer a tincture, maybe an edible? Does it work better for you? Which way do you prefer for the medicinal? I'm sure for recreation, you pop on a joint.
As a person who has very slow to change, who was first introduced to cannabis through smoking, I have to admit I've never adopted any other way but to smoke. And one of the reasons is I like the fact that it can last just 2 or 3 hours, and then I go back to doing whatever else I had been doing in terms of the high.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can also regulate the dose. You can take one hit and get at a certain level, or you can take 3.
I never like ingesting for that reason. It's a different story when you know now it's 5 milligrams per dose. In the old days when you tried to cook it yourself, you overdosed or you underdosed, you wasted your money or you wasted your mind, right? So, but I prefer smoking. But I prefer smoking with certain ways to minimize the health risks.
Let's bring that now. Well, let's roll around to that.
Okay.
You have written a book. What's the name of it? And I know it is definitely about smoking marijuana in a safer way. What is the name of it? Tell us a little bit about it.
It's called Mindful Marijuana Smoking. The subtitle explains it. The subtitle is Health Tips for Cannabis Smokers. How to minimize the health risks. All right? And the book is this $30 academic press book, not necessarily for popular consumption, but lo and behold, I took 8 of the 10 chapters, summarized them into 2,000 words each, had them published in Weed World, which is a British cannabis magazine.
Nice.
And in Grow magazine, or American Grow magazine. And those articles summarize each chapter very well. And then I put those articles on my website, so there it is, free for anyone's use, nothing to sell. Just go to my website, you'll find those articles there. Every chapter is summarized.
And I know you have some good tips. I've read the book myself, but I appreciate you giving it out to the public for free.
Right.
How can they find it? How can they find you on social media, with the website? Tell us all of that stuff.
My name is Mark Braunstein, and my website is mark.braunstein. Braunstein is spelled B-R-A-U-N, like the German electronics company.
Braun, right?
Stein, S-T-E-I-N. Stein means stone, by the way.
So that means Stein, when you're drinking the beer, was actually probably made of stone back in the day.
Probably so, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, ceramic at least. So mark.braunstein.org, org for organic.
Oh, I like that.
Okay, and you'll find a whole web page devoted to cannabis and a whole other page devoted to medical marijuana. Articles I've written on just the subject of medical marijuana.
Great.
So they're all there. So
great. Well, it sounds like the plant has definitely changed your life. I'm sure it's taking you on a different path than what, let's say, the major medical industry would have done.
Right.
And it's really nice to have had you here.
Okay.
And I'm glad you wrote a book. And and a tip for everybody: if you're gonna smoke the marijuana, do it mindfully, just like you should do everything else. Check out Mark's website. Thanks again, Mark, for being with us.
Thank you, Joe.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Okay.